You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jasper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Autumn, and this is episode 135 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast. And today, Jesper is off on vacation in Denmark and having hopefully a lovely time. And instead, I have with me two very special guests. We have Pam and Paul from Betabooks. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
So, I sent this in the email when I asked if you wanted to join me, that my niece actually is responsible for having found you and introduced me. And I've set up an account and started playing around, but I have yet to understand the full breadth of Betabooks, so I'm looking forward to hopefully a crash course. But first, please introduce yourselves and a little bit about, how you found, are you writers? I didn't even find much information on Betabooks and your backgrounds, other than a really cute blurb at the bottom of the website that made me want to desperately reach out to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so my husband Andrew is the third of our little triumvirate here. He's a programmer, nice. And Paul and Andrew and I are all friends in Raleigh. Andrew wrote a book and had trouble getting anybody to read it. And then when people did read it to beta or whatever, he had trouble finding all the feedback. He was tired of that, so he decided to build it. But only because Paul said that he wouldn't read Andrew's book until Andrew built the thing.
Oh.
So he did. And
strong arm.
Right? I know, but it worked. I'm not sure Paul wanted it to work, but it did. And we've been going since then. And the reason Betabooks exists is to make it easy for writers to run their beta, to send their documents out securely to readers, because the document doesn't even go out. It's all on one site. So there's no PDFs or other documents floating around. The feedback is all there in one place for it to be sorted and marked. And so the idea there is just to make an easy way for authors to do that. So right now I handle the customer support, and we've Paul and I have done conferences together. Not this last year, obviously.
Yeah.
But,
No, we did. So, we did a digital conference together. We did an online conference.
That's true.
That's pretty much it. I mean, technically speaking, one of the big headaches for Andrew was that when he did find a group of people, he just emailed them a Word doc, and then he heard back from a number of people saying, "Oh, I can't open this," and so he resent it in a different format. And then he started getting feedback via a series of emails, each person sending their own kind of email thread. And then he began making corrections, and he sent out new drafts to some people. And he ended up in the situation where he couldn't collate all of his feedback from all of his emails, figure out who had which draft, and figure out what feedback he'd already used in making revisions in his draft. And he said, well, this is a data flow issue, and that's kind of what software is ideally suited to solving. So I bet I could do this. And we were sitting around at dinner, and he said, does that sound like a good idea, Paul? And I said, that sounds like a fantastic idea. In fact, I won't read your book until I can read it on the software. So I didn't just get asked to read a book and say, no, make me a better tool to do it.
I absolutely adore that your husband is like, I had a problem and solved it, because it is definitely a problem that authors have, especially as Jesper and I, as you heard in the intro, as we've come out with more books. Last summer, we released 3 nonfictions, and we were doing them all at the same time with different teams of beta readers, 40 here, 30 here, 70 there, and to get the feedback and to do I thought I was just going to go insane, because I'm the formatter of the two of us. I'm the software person in our side of the business. So yeah, I was just I think it must have oozed out to my family that my niece is like, "Hey, have you seen this this platform?" And as soon as I saw that, yeah, it's like people come to you and you know where they are, so that like you don't do formats one day and then 2 days later someone else sends you something else, and you've done so many edits you can't. Like, you're like, did I do this error they found or did I not? Oh my gosh! So it is.
That you just described exactly, essentially, the workflow issue that Andrew had and that we set out initially to solve, and then over time we were basically in a sort of a semi-open beta for over a year, just inviting authors and telling authors they could invite their friends, and that's when we began to get more and more feedback about, oh, I have this problem, and oh, I have this problem, and some like the formatting issue was a very interesting one for us. I know you've talked to a bunch of people, but we wanted to make reading books easy on a phone and on a computer. And so we basically said, this is pre-formatting. This is a pre-press tool. So we do dynamic formatting on pretty much everything because we have so many people reading on phones. I think it's over 90% of beta readers are doing at least some of their reading on phones. So that was really important for us.
Wow. That always impresses me, partially because I have bad eyesight. I've had PRK, which is like LASIK done, and I'm starting to see it starting to fuzz out just a little bit, but it's been a decade. So, I mean, I used to only be able to see literally 3 inches and then the world was blurry. So I'm happy to have 25/20. It's fantastic, but I cannot read on a phone to save my life. I get an important email and I'm like, where's the computer? I just need a computer. So, but it is amazing that people, they got younger eyes, I suppose. I don't know. But so I think a lot of people are. Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Do you think a lot of people?
Well, I think a lot of people are busy, and so they're reading while they're waiting to pick up their kids and they don't. They're like, oh, I need something new. You finish the book you have in your car. You're like, oh, I'm beta reading for so-and-so. I can just pick it up. I'm waiting in a waiting room somewhere. I'm in line at the grocery store. So we hear a lot of stories like that from people saying, oh, this is so easy. I can read a little bit here, like using any of your e-readers as well.
Oh, yeah. You're stuck at Little League practice for the next hour and a half or something. Yeah, you're going to whip out the book. You're like, no, I'm taking pictures, honey. Really? That's what I'm doing. We're all good parents at heart. I'm the sneaky one, but that is fantastic. So you've mentioned that, you were in beta testing and everything for a while. So when did this happen? When did Andrew have this book and this idea and you started developing it?
2018.
Wow. So it's, new, but not that new. That's fantastic.
When did you move?
We left in 2017, left Raleigh in 2017.
So it was 2016 when we started.
Right. And I think we
launched to the public in 18.
Yeah.
Wow. I love stories like that because I think being on the computer end, my dad was into computers, my nephew's a coder, and I dabble enough to break things and usually not fix them on my own. Exactly. And so I think it's important for people, just like with writing a book, so many people don't realize, some authors, they seem to be able to whip them out in 5 days. I know that's probably insane, but it seems to be a month or two. They release 12 books a year. And for others, it's over a year. I mean, I know I've had people ask, my first series, which literally every single book took me a year. It took me a year. That was a year of my life, and they asked for it for free. And you're like, it was a year of my life. So I think that's fantastic to know, to code this website. And it does look very lovely on the surface, which is fantastic. That takes a lot of skill. That takes design skill. It takes coding skill. You've got to be able to click a button and it actually does something without breaking. So a couple years seems incredibly reasonable to me.
And much like a lot of authors, I mean, we were both working our regular jobs, and this was something we did on the side. And it's still a fairly small kind of operation. It's something that we do because we're passionate about the community and the role that we think finding beta readers and connecting with readers plays in kind of an author's journey.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to get into the beta readers, and you can finish what you're about to say, Pam, but I also want to talk about, so you two are not authors. I have to know how you met. There's a story there, how you got sucked into the reader universe, which is a wonderful place to be, I think.
Yes. So, goodness. So we met because we lived next door to each other I mean,
Nice.
I met Paul's mom first. I met his mom, Melissa, and we became friends. And then I was hanging out at her house, and this is how I remember it, Paul. And then I met you, and then we were going to the same church. So Andrew met Paul, and I was over at Melissa's house a lot with my kids. And Paul, you have history in the publishing business. So
I worked in publishing right out of college, and I did co-write some stuff. And
Nice.
so I work in film production, and I've also worked in the theater a lot. So I've actually written plays and produced plays.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
writing has been a big part of stuff that I've done. I'm not like an aspiring author. That's just not really one of the things that is a passion of mine. I'm in the fourth draft of a nonfiction book, and it's really more
fantastic.
kind of a venting exercise for me. I've realized over time, and not probably ever going to be for people. But Pam is leaving out that I think eventually we found out that we both liked similar books, and we started lending each other books. And then someone gave Andrew, I think, Risk Legacy, which is one of these board games that you play for 8 months.
yeah.
And then we all started playing that. Andrew and I and a couple other friends. And it, as Risk is, it was one of those rage-inducing, either you love each other or hate each other by the end of it things. And most of us hated each other. Yeah. And then we moved on, and then we started playing D&D, and we just kind of kept doing stuff. And then I think maybe a couple years later, Andrew did NaNoWriMo, which is where he wrote the book that he ended up wanting to beta through Betabooks.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And Pam and Andrew are married. That helps. So that's how they know each other.
Do I not say that? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I am a professional musician, so I come at the creative business from a slightly different angle. But what I have learned is you can't make it unless you really put yourself out there.
Yes.
And you just need to try, and you're going to face rejection, and you're going to face what feels like failure. But artists who want to make it can. And it really just matters that you continue honing your craft and reaching out to find your audience. And that's what I think beta reading really is at its heart. It's finding your audience, reaching out to readers, finding the readers who love your book and will tell other people about your book. So we really see beta reading not as a transaction necessarily the way you would with an editor or other like professional, because beta readers aren't professionals. They are people who love books. And I think it's something really special for a reader to be part of an author's process. And we've found that those readers who are involved in the process become really attached to the writers and promote their work. And just, it's a very special thing. And so we encourage authors not to just say thank you for the feedback, but to continue to develop relationships. And for those beta readers, maybe offer a free copy of the book. Mention them in your acknowledgments at the very least, but treat it like a relationship with each reader. And you'll get the reputation as a writer who is really in it for the craft, but also for the people that you're writing for. And I think that's important. And we've seen that in beta books, at least authors and readers can interact in the books themselves. So a reader can leave a comment and a writer can respond directly to the comment in that book. And so there's some back and forth there that can lead to some really neat interactions.
Oh, that must be really cool to see on the back end, to be able to see like that relationship develop, which, you can have over email, but it's, like you said, it's all on one platform. It makes it kind of easy. And you could literally just respond as they're reading instead of like, oh yeah, I got that email into my spam folder.
Right.
We don't watch much of what happens. I mean, one of the things that is big for us is kind of people having a private workspace. So most of the workspace is very private, and we only really look at something if we're asked by an author for a technical reason. So it would be awesome to like snoop on people, but we don't do that. We generally hear about it when an author or a reader decides to tell us that. Just to clarify.
That's very true.
Nobody behind the scenes is sneak reading anybody's book. So
that's probably a very ethical choice of yours. That's very good. What do you think? I mean, I love your description of the process, especially coming from a musician, because I agree. It's it is hard work. I see so many authors who, I mean, they say that, so many people start out writing a book, and if they finish their first one, that's already a huge chunk of people who don't make it to the finish of first one. And I do see a lot of first-time authors make the mistake of just launching without beta reading or getting feedback or a content editor, which is expensive. I mean, that's where beta readers make a good, cheap version of a content editor, but it's something to get feedback, and they just put it out there, and then they get disappointed and they never keep working on something new. So that is definitely, I think, where I see beta reader coming in. But what do you think has been some of the strengths that, either even your husband's books or things you've heard from authors, that why beta readers can be so important, especially for new authors trying to learn the craft and how to write something that readers will love?
So I'll start kind of with the technical side, and I think Pam can chime in kind of with her own thoughts. But kind of from a business perspective, authors should, if they want to sell books, they need to treat it like a business. And if we were talking about software or any other thing else, we would be talking about finding your customers or product fit. And so one of the things that, especially in the process of finding beta readers, a lot of authors are forced to discover is, so who is my book for? And what is it about my book that certain readers will like? So talking about fantasy, there's a wealth of subgenres, right? And you're not just going to say, hey, this is a fantasy book for fantasy readers. You're going to say, well, is this urban fantasy? Is this high fantasy? Is this grimdark? And then narrowing it down and figuring out, do I have a reader profile, or do I have multiple reader profiles? Do I have a book description for myself, kind of for marketing and for understanding who I'm writing to and why I'm writing to for these people? And so that's one of the things that we see authors and we encourage authors to do. And the beta reading process forces you to figure out who your readers are, and then to go out and look for them and find out, where do these people congregate? How can I find them? How can I reach them? And if you don't know that before you launch a book, you're not going to be effective at, say, targeting ads, even writing press copy or blurbs or back cover matter, because you're not thinking about who the person is that's reading it and why they're going to resonate with it.
It's true.
And I think artistically, it's important to get over the hurdle of sharing something that's so precious to you. As you've mentioned, you may have spent 12 months creating this thing, and it's not a thing, right? It's
a baby.
Almost a baby, right?
Exactly.
And it's a scary thing to send your baby out into the world. So you should vet your babysitters, right? So it makes sense to look for those people that you think will be good for your book, and to really treat it as, this is something precious that I love, and I think it can be a gift to the world and to a certain community of people. And it's so hard, but you need to make just a little bit of detachment from your work. And I think people are scared to share their work because they're afraid of mean people. But I will say, I think most people are not mean people. You can say to someone, I wrote this thing, I love it. I'd love your feedback. Please be nice. And they will. They will. So I think,
or they won't read it, which is its own feedback,
right?
And you're fine.
That's true.
But most people will not read it and say, "This is terrible. What are you doing?" Yes. So I think to have faith in your own work and in the people that you are initially reaching out to, and when you're doing that first foray into finding readers, it's okay to use the people in your social circle. And I think, like, Paul and I really love the same kinds of books. So if I were writing a fantasy novel, I would ask him to be one of my first readers because he has so much familiarity with the genre. And I have other friends who we share the same interests. So to start with people whom you know, but whom you also share that passion with, is a good place to start. And they might know other people that you don't know who would also be interested. So I think to be open-minded as you send your book out into the world, but it's okay to start with those people that you already trust. And to be sure that when you talk to people, also, you don't want to just ask if the book is good and if they liked it. Because if they love you, they'll say, yeah, it was good. I liked it. Asking specific questions.
That is the problem.
You and your readers.
Yeah, that is the problem of having family read it. Your mom's always going to love it. It doesn't matter what you wrote. So I do remember seeing with the beta books, you could set up actually questions as you're going through, like, hey, does this scene make sense? Does this character ring true? I like being able to ask those questions because you're right. I mean, a good beta reader who maybe does this for a couple different authors, because with indie publishing, oh my goodness, there are some very savvy beta readers who could basically do this as a profession. It's how they get maybe free books. And they are darn good, but others, you're right, you have to coax them, kind of like, did this character sound right? Did I screw them up somewhere? Could you let me know? And then you start getting the full story.
Yeah, and that was something that we were very mindful of when we were making the software, is finding there's not an overwhelming amount of customization on beta books, but there is a fair amount. Specifically with asking questions is one of the things we were very mindful of. So you can give full book guidance in your table of contents. You can give individual specific guidance at the beginning or the end of each chapter, where you ask, this is the climax of the romance. Can you tell me this, this, and this? And then we also kind of offer guides about asking questions. We tend to encourage people not to ask yes or no questions. Ask things that are more about opinion, or have an open answer ability. I personally say it's better to ask questions at the end of the chapter, so they're not thinking about it as they're going through. But some people like to have their readers focusing on something per chapter. And then we also let authors insert kind of broader questionnaires, kind of as like an act break or a book break as they're going through, which some people like, because they're like, hey, we've just finished the first act. Like, which of these characters do you like the most? Why do you think they're the hero? And then sometimes you'll run into authors who are like, oh no, they all thought so-and-so was the main character and I'm about to kill them, or something of that nature.
It's not a problem with your GRR, Martin.
That's right. Well, that's just part of the plot.
I think that's the goal if you're him, but
yes. Take that stick and put it in your readers and twist a little bit.
Oh.
No, that's fantastic. I like too that you talk about coaxing, and I think it was part of the platform. If I remember correctly, you could see where people were. So if you suddenly saw that like 15 of the 20 people you asked and only made it to chapter 10, you would know, even if they weren't giving you feedback, you're like, okay, everyone stopped at 10? What's going on?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's that passive feedback.
Yes.
You can infer from the silences.
Hopefully someone will at least tell you what's wrong with chapter 10. But that is...
something's wrong.
Usefulness. Yeah, you know something's wrong. There's a usefulness in that kind of statistics, instead of sending out those emails, like you said, and never hearing back, or just getting the, oh, yeah, I read that a month ago. It was great. Never getting anything else.
And you also say that, like, that's... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that we found as we've helped authors run a ton of betas is that very thing you just said, oh, I read it a month ago. Yeah. What we've discovered is if you treat it like an important part of your process, you actually get better response and a more engaged readership, because they perceive that, oh, this beta is a part of this author's business and I have a responsibility to them. So saying, hey, can you read this book in the next 2 weeks? Or the deadline for being finished is this day, and then the book is closed, which is a feature we have where essentially you just shut the book and you can work with your feedback. We found that that's actually very effective. It's also one of those things that a lot of authors are really resistant to, because they feel like they're placing some strange imposition on people. But it's one of those ironies where when you give people a higher expectation of their importance and their responsibility, they often respond positively because they are affirmed in how important they are and how valued they are by an author.
Yeah. And that probably helped weed out some of the chaff too, the people who just want the free book versus the people who feel like part of the team and want to help.
Yeah. And I think it's important to treat your beta, it's important not to treat it as if you're asking a favor from the readers. I mean, on one hand you are, but on the other hand, you really need their help, I think. And, you should want to develop those relationships. So I'm just saying in a different way what Paul said, that you don't need to be hesitant and, ask people to try. You can approach with some confidence because this is something that you have worked on. You see value in it, and you trust that other people will see value in it as well, and that they will derive value from it. And now they may see different things in your work than you see, because we all have this personal relationship with the things that we create and the things that we output. But that's one of the beautiful things about, especially casting your net wider with beta readers. It's great to have 10, 20, if you can find it. So you've got a nice sample size, and you might see trends that you weren't even aware of in your own work, and things that you can capitalize or lean into in the next books in the series, if you're writing series, which is good business if that's what you're writing for. But I think there's a lot of value to be shared, and it's really good to approach it with the idea that you are bringing something valuable into their lives, not only asking for their help with your little project.
I like that. I think we all do better when we realize that we're taking this seriously. I mean, we have it as a hobby and something we're passionate about, but giving it that dedication, that time on our own part, and the people who love reading giving their expertise as readers is very valuable, because there's a lot of things that they can catch that a careful reader that knows that they're really doing it to help the author and not just they're going to, ARC readers being an example. I mean, they're getting an advanced reader copy just to leave a review. That's great, but they're not often being very cautious readers. They might be they might notice a typo, but they're not going to sit there and go, why did you have the character do that? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what the beta readers are for.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did think it was so interesting. It threw me off first that, you, from what I saw, you have to bring in your own manuscript. Like, you basically almost copy and paste might be the fastest way to get a book up there. But I do see the value. I mean, I still remember I read the Twilight series. It's definitely not one of my favorite, but what Stephanie went through when someone took the book that it's taken almost a decade for her to finally release Edward's point of view from the first book, because someone took her file and started sharing it. And I mean, not all of us are going to be Stephanie Meyer and be these famous authors, but that is the problem. That is the fear that when you're sending this out to the world, whether you're sending an EPUB file or, because like BookFunnel has a place where you can send out reader copies too, and PDFs, someone can take that and share it somewhere where you don't mean it to be. So this one, you make it all stay right there, which is kind of, exactly. I do see the point to that.
I mean, and that's, even I go back and forth on manuscript theft, because when it happens, it's very publicized and people have a lot of fear about it. But generally, when you're an aspiring author, the risk is very low, especially if you're trying to start a business. Because as you know, like, writing a book and selling a book is not the goal. It's creating a platform and having books. Yeah. Exactly. No. But there's also there's an increased vulnerability that an author is kind of sharing with the readers, especially depending on where they are in the process. Because some authors will beta unedited chapters if they have a group of people that are really hungry. Like, for instance, there's an author who used the site early on when we were in beta who would dictate a chapter and immediately share it to a small section, like the elite tier of his mailing list, to get feedback before it even went through edits or a copy edit, because they were so hungry and such big fans, but also because they would give him good feedback. And that sounds like a terrifying creative vulnerability to me. And that's one of the reasons we want to make sure that people feel that they have the control over access.
That's really cool. So is it possible to do that, to set up like different tiers like this? I'm sharing this with just this subset group that are my special fantastic fans. And when you're ready to get more betas, you kind of open it up to other people as well?
Yeah. So the way the process works is you upload your manuscript and then you send out invitations to readers to their email addresses. And if you wanted to run 20 rounds of betas with 20 different groups of readers, you could. Cool. So you invite the readers that you want on that first time. And then when they're done, you can just remove them from the book and then do whatever you want. If you want to make any edits, you can, and then just invite another group, and they can go through the book. And as the author, you can decide whether readers are seeing each other's feedback or not. Mm-hmm. So you can decide whether they're experiencing a clean read every time. And I really think you ought to do that. But there are authors who like to build reader community by letting readers see each other's comments and sort of appreciate the book together in that sense.
That's kind of cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like a beta book club.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Now I want a beta book club. That is kind of fun. That's really, and I did see, so you can send out email. I did like that, because so if you already have, like, you've been doing this and you have, 40 emails, you can send out an email list. But there are actually beta readers who are on the site, and you can, like, as an author, I think from what I saw, you could basically go and, like, look at their profile and say, hey, would you like to try out this book? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, all readers join at the invitation of an author at one point or another. So you don't just have people showing up. You have people invited who likely are trusted by another author. So we ask readers to fill out a reader profile if they're interested, if they're looking to be contacted by new authors, and we call that the reader directory. Okay. And they include as much information as they want. Their areas of expertise, genre preferences, genre dispreferences, anything that they think uniquely identifies them as a reader. And the database is searchable, both by, you can just search simply for genre. Oh yeah, anything you want. There's an advanced search. You could search for roller skates and see if you come up with a reader.
And then
it's searchable on our free trial, but querying readers is available only on our subscription, because we want to protect our readers. We don't want them to get spammed.
Oh, thank goodness.
So you send out a query, and a reader can decide whether or not to read, and it's just a real quick button in their email, just accept or reject. It's also on their dashboard on the home screen.
Okay.
And we find that a number of our authors have, I don't know, Paul, I think most authors find a few readers on the reader directory, but a lot of people really do their own work to find their own readers. We also have an opportunity. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
The directory is a bit of a kind of, it was a sneaky way that we thought that we could help authors get used to the idea of asking people to read their book. So,
I like that. That's true.
There's no expectation from us that you'll be able to find a group of beta readers through the directory. You might find one or two people, and we encourage the readers when they get queried, if they don't like the query, to say, hey, the reason I didn't like this query is because I list this in my preferences and you said this, or I don't want to read your book. It sounds amazing, but I'm busy. But it's really kind of a backdoor way to get authors used to the idea of maybe having a much softer approach, or people they know are already interested in. They can say, oh, here's my 160-word pitch to you. I know you like this and this. Let me practice how to approach someone. And so that's kind of why it's there. Also, a lot of people who came to the site for one author started emailing us and saying, hey, I really enjoyed doing this. Can I beta more books? And so that was why we created it. And then we tried to find ways to make it a useful part of the author process. We so strongly encourage people to go out and find their own group of readers out in the world, because that's going to be your business.
Yeah. I mean, especially if, like you said, you're sending out an email to invite them. So you have their email. So you're creating your newsletter list, and these other people you're going to like say, hey, it's now out in stores and I thanked you in it. And if you want to buy it, that'd be great, but you don't have to. Just tell your friends and family or anyone you think. And yeah, that is, you want that author platform, because without that, if Amazon decides that you aren't good enough and kicks you out, which is rare, but occasionally things do happen with people's authors' profiles. They get accused of something or break some rule and they're tossed out of Amazon. And that's a big deal. That's, no matter how, I'm a wide author, I'm across everywhere, because I just think the world should have competition and should be available and open. But yeah, Amazon's still most of the eggs in the basket.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've done 135 episodes. I'm sure the importance of mailing lists is something you have talked about extensively. And I mean, that's one of the reasons we tell people to find their own readers. Start building that list now. Start building that list when you're halfway through your first draft. Start thinking about who you're going to want to find. If you're going to start marketing on an online community and your book isn't done, you should join that community and become a member so that when you are ready, people will know, oh, this isn't some stranger. This is Panda Friend 64 who's asking me to read their new book. And I've had 15 interactions with Panda Friend. Like, let's read their book.
Yeah.
That's true. That's I like Panda Friend. You just came up with that one, or is that secretly your login somewhere?
I'm never going to tell. Hey, everyone, on pandabuddies.com.
That is great. But I did see, it is true. So it's nice to know, though, if you're an author and you're truly new, you can at least learn to work on your marketing and like say, how do you ask people to do this? But there, you might actually get a couple of people. So if you're brand spanking new and you have no one to outreach for, you might get one or two. You might get your first start, and that's always important. Yeah. And I love the fact that free trials. I've tried out a whole bunch of different editing software recently and stuff like that, and there was one or two that didn't have free trials, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Even a 14-day, but you have a free level, a free tier, and I'm like, I like you guys. Free tiers are wonderful.
So
especially
it really
after COVID.
Oh my gosh. It really is meant to give writers an idea of what it's like to use the software. And a lot of writers are content just they have the one book and they have a few friends they want to read it. But then if you do have more aspirations and a larger readership, then you already know whether the software works for you. So that really was the goal there.
Yeah, just to give it a whirl with book one and a couple of readers just to see how you like it. That's invaluable. Yeah. And if you like it, you're going to come back for this if you're really into writing. Yeah.
And we find that most writers will use Betabooks for about a month to run their beta. And you can turn off your subscription after that. And all that means is that the readers no longer have access, but you, of course, retain access to your own work indefinitely, whether you're paid or not at that point. And I think a lot of people come to our site looking for readers, and they see Betabooks and say, oh, these people will find me beta readers. And that is one of the reasons, among many, that Paul's already mentioned, that we instituted the reader directory. But we also I've got a book club called Pam's Beta Jam, and anybody can submit a novel. Anyone who's looking to find readers can submit, and I'll review, and I choose pretty much any fiction genre, and also looking for memoirs, because we've got a lot of interest in that among our readership. Oh, awesome. But I make it available to our I think there are about 1,000 readers that have come through PBJ at one time. And so most writers find they have 2 or 3 really dedicated readers who make it all the way through and really enjoy their book at the end of that process. So we try to make that available. That's available whether you are on the free trial or subscribed or whatever. So that's, if you're looking for a way to find readers for free, that's a good way too. So yeah, all that just requires that you upload your book and do a query at the group's homepage. And we're just getting started this summer after a hiatus, because a lot of people just were not writing. But I'd love to be able to send out a bunch. So anyone listening who's interested, has a book that you need to get some eyes on and don't know how to do it, please submit.
Come and check this out. That is an opportunity, because I think that is definitely, it's not maybe the number one question I get asked by new writers, but it's probably in the top 5. So that's so cool.
The question being, how do I find readers, or?
The question being, how do I find beta readers specifically? Like, where do I go find them? It seems to stump a lot of people. I honestly think a lot of new authors especially get stumped by the difference between author groups, which authors are readers, but often we're so busy writing we don't read as much as we want to. Or I know with me, I'm like currently on just like, if it hasn't won a Hugo or a Nebula award, I'm not reading it, because I want to see the top tier fiction that just makes me go, holy crap, this is amazing. And that's just kind of like my goal for the year. So I don't read a lot of other people's books unless I'm doing edits. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then the new authors, so they go to these author groups and they're asking them, hey, you want to be a beta reader? And they're not going to like the reader groups and asking them if they want to be a beta reader. It takes a little while to figure that out, I think.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing is sorry, Paul, I'll just if another writer is reading your book, they're going to critique your craft, and that's not what you need from a beta reader.
That's very true.
Or the version of the book that they would write.
Yes. Oh, some of my favorite reviews have been, well, that's not what I would have done. So yeah. That's great. Yeah, then you write it your way.
Right.
And one of the things it's frustrating for all authors, especially new authors, and it's also frustrating for us trying to help people, is that two things I run into a lot of times is very naturally you're used to asking authors for advice on how to be an author because you've gotten great advice on how to write your book. But a lot of times what happens is they either instinctively, if they're successful, found readers kind of through luck or doing something that they were doing already kind of naturally, or they used a process maybe 8 years ago. One thing I hear a lot at writers' conferences is authors going, I started writing a blog and all you have to do is write every day and then you'll get readers. And I'm like, well, I mean, when was the last time you actually read a blog? I mean, it's not the same as it was in, say, 2002 when people had a list of blogs they would visit every day. Mm-hmm. Now you might be relying on your Instagram feed or a Substack or Pinterest. Yeah. So you have to find new things and it's always changing the best way to reach readers. And then the second thing is your early readers, that's almost like a fingerprint. Finding them and forming that relationship is going to be incredibly unique to you, your book, and who they are. And so I think you have to do some fairly systematic and deep thinking about who you are, who the book is, and who you want to be reading it.
No, that's very good advice and so true. And I do think, I remember when, because you're right, I started on Twitter back before the second resurgence of Twitter being popular, and I loved it. And I remember someone saying, it's like your first 100 followers are going to be the ones you remember and interact with the most. And I think that's true even with beta readers. It's going to be those first ones that you, even if they fade off for some reason, they're going to be the ones you remember and you're so appreciative of. So building that first 100 list and just fantastic to do.
Yeah. And you learn, as they enjoy your book, you learn what you're doing. Because yes. I mean, there's so much focus on writing and craft, which I think is very important. And I feel like in some ways it's a dirty trick because you write this book with a group of authors, you work really hard on it, you edit, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to publish. And then it's a completely new skill set. It's a completely new set of expectations. And that's one of the reasons that we're like, okay, we want to build a tool to make this less of a logistical headache. And that was something that, as we were developing Betabooks further, we really found to be encouraging to all of us, which is this is a hard process. Asking people to read your book when you don't have a name, you've never written a thing, involves a tremendous amount of rejection. And it's awkward and uncomfortable no matter how confident you are, no matter how strong your ego is. So just taking away the headache of you finally got someone to say yes, and then you send them a file and they say they can't open it. You feel embarrassed and you doubt yourself and you're like, well, if I reformat this and send it, will they even open it? Have I already blown that chance? And going through that over and over just is demoralizing. So we really worked to make a tool that could remove as many opportunities for you to feel worse about yourself as we could.
That could almost be like your tagline. Betabooks will teach you marketing in a soft way. That's so lovely. So, I mean, to wrap up, I mean, is there any final advice or like your favorite thing or a favorite moment that has come out of working with authors? Because I know my husband is a photographer, and I was just shocked at how cruel other photographers could be on technique and composition. And oh my goodness, it's not like that with authors. I think they're some of the sweetest people on the planet. So any last notes that you would like to end on?
Start collecting my thoughts.
That's fair enough.
Well, I'll go first. I mean, you're right. The author community is amazingly open and they share and support each other in an incredible way. I think one of the reasons is because it's so hard and because the information is out there and a lot of people just don't do it when they get to the hard parts. And the hard part is first finishing your book. I mean, the stats, what, something like 1 in 10 people finish their book, or 10 out of 100, something like that. But then the marketing part is just as challenging. People will keep writing books and won't put in the hard work of saying, okay, I'm going to have to go out and find people that I think will like this book, and I'm going to have to ask 100 to get 10, and I'm going to have to do that over and over. And authors will tell you that because it's not a secret, and they're not worried about – and authors just aren't worried about people competing with them because they can't write books fast enough for all the readers. And because it doesn't get talked about as much in author world, I always encourage people to do something like go on YouTube and watch the Y Combinator startup school videos. We're talking about tech companies, but really the rules apply when you're talking about customer fit. It's the same as reader fit. When you're talking about finding your early customers, it's the same as finding your early readers. When you talk about honing your vision and your mission statement, like create a mission statement or a vision for your book and for your author career and use that to guide how you look for readers. The practice is very similar between, say, tech startups and your creative startup. So if you're not finding things that are helping you in the author world, look further afield, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's what you are if you're an author. And if you're serious, you're building a business as an entrepreneur, and you want to look for people. If someone's launched a $100 million tech company, maybe they have something that can help you find 100 readers or 1,000 readers.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And I think I would just circle back to the belief in your work as maybe not perfect yet, but there are so many readers out there. And no reader goes, I like this author and I don't have room for any other authors. None of us who love reading are like that. We're all like, I finished all these books by this one person. Who else can I read all of their books of? And so there are readers out there who will love your book. All you have to do is find them. I mean, right? But they are findable. They are findable. And not everybody is your reader, and that's normal and good and fine. And when you find someone who's not your reader, that is one more step toward finding someone who is, because you've learned something maybe about your book or about the people or person that you reached out to. So I would say just persist. Just stay out there. Keep going. Because what you've done is significant and will be really valuable not only to you, but to other people who will enjoy and appreciate your work and enjoy getting to know you in the process. Very cool. And hey, you might get to join your book club and get to talk to you as well. And that's really sweet. Right. I try to do a little bit of coaching also for people for whom it's their first beta, if we choose the book. So we've got resources on our website for how to find readers and sort of best practices for how to run a beta. And we really want to help writers be successful in this this segment of talk about rejection a lot. Yeah, but it's a part of growth. You can't grow unless you're put through uncomfortable situations. Yes, and you can't grow unless you actually keep producing something and trying. Right. So that is fantastic. I love the resources. And of course, we're going to link to Betabooks in the show notes. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to find. It's just betabooks.co. So you can go and find it that way as well. So thank you so much, Pam and Paul, for being here. And thank you so much for making Betabooks and actually having some resources on there that are free, which are fantastic. And then you make it so good that you just have to buy in and join in as well. Well, thank you for having us. This has been fun. This is our first one in a year. I mean, I was like, oh no, I haven't podcasted in forever. Is this going to be okay? And it was okay. It was actually better than okay. It was fantastic. Good. Thank you for letting me break you back into podcasting. Yeah. So this has been really fun. I think we've got a coupon code, AmWritingFantasy. So AWF. Yeah. Anyone who finds us through this podcast, use the code AWF for 25% off any subscription for life. Oh, man. I might go use that myself. Upgrade my account. That is fantastic. Well, yes, absolutely. Fantastic. I will put that in the show notes as well. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Have a fabulous day. And if there's anything we can do to help you out again,
let us know. It was fantastic having you here.
All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
And so next week, Jesper and I will be back, and it'll be one of our top 10 lists. This time, the top 10 worst ever characters.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.